Hi, good afternoon or good morning to you. My name is Sherman Crancer, and welcome to the Voice of the Microsoft Partner. We're so happy to be here today. We're going to be letting a few more people coming in here. We're starting right on time. But today, we've got an excellent overview, or not overview, but just a whole session today with a very dynamic and powerful speaker, somebody who's been in the industry that we're so happy and proud to be a part of our show today. The Voice of the Microsoft Partner, what it's really designed for is for people to come, once a month to learn from the best, the brightest, the titans of sales and industry. That's who we're trying to learn from. And, I want to make sure that this is always a great venue for people to come and learn. Now, we all know that we are a business, but we are very light on making this a commercial because we just don't want to do that, right? From time to time, you'll hear us talking about a couple things. But today, I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. We're going to have this new thing called the Microsoft Minute because what we want to do is also bring some of the latest and greatest things to do. So, the topic today is really, about mentoring and coaching. And, I've had the great opportunity to have mentors as well as be a mentee in my career. And I just thought this would be a great opportunity for all of us to really kind of get a good idea of really what is it? Why do you do it? What do you get from it? What do you give? What are the give gets? And kind of, really kind of dig deep into this party. We hear a lot of people that go to coaches, right? They get a coach. And I remember a lot of times do you need a coach, Sherman? I'd be like, I don't need a coach. I don't need a coach. What do I need a coach for, right? But then then you get introduced to somebody that gives you other ideas and dissenting viewpoints of what you have, and it really opens up your mind. I also remember anecdotally, I've always had a hard time understanding like going to a counselor, going to like a psychologist, and I've been to like two or three. Just they say, hey, go talk about your feelings, and I would sit there and be like, well, what is this all about? I look at them, they look at me, and I didn't quite understand until I found one lady, and I remember she looked like the small scientist from The Incredibles. I remember that little lady with the bob haircut, right? Right. And these little glasses. And I remember asking her this one question that I had just, something that bothered me for a long time, right? And she was like, well, should have been. She was, had this accent. I'm not going to go into it, but let me tell you why you think of this, right? And she came up with this answer that literally she solved 20 years of me like debating about this thing. But, and we're not talking to psychologists today. However, I think we're talking about topics that, that if you allow yourself to be open to coaching or to, being a mentor or mentee, I think there's a lot of great benefits for that. So I'm going to leave you with this. I used to say this all the time when I was at Microsoft, and I want you to kind of think about this. The reason we do this is to help people out, to raise our profile, but you need to ask yourself this one question. Leaders do what they talk about, and dreamers are the ones that talk about what they're going to do. And the question I need you to ask today is, are you a leader, or are you a dreamer? And I think a lot of people here, you're leaders because you're coming to this, and we've got a great leader on today, so I'm so happy. All right, so we're going to go right into actually, before we get Eric Van Bibber on here, I just want to shout out, we have an old friend of mine, a good colleague, one of the best salesperson I think I've ever met, and his name is Dan Callahan. Dan, if you want to just unmute real quick, you can say hello or come on the show. The reason why I'm saying this is I think Dan is looking for a new opportunity, but I've worked with him over several years, and probably one of the best that I've been with account management and whatnot. Dan, do you want to just really give a quick shout out, and then he'll be putting your stuff in the chat window?
Well, Sherman, I got to look around and see if there's another Dan Callahan behind me that would live up to all that praise. But thank you for that. No, that's excellent. I'll put my contact details in just a second here. Yeah, so I've been working in and around the Microsoft stack, and particularly the cloud stack, since like 2015, when my boss said, can you go to this Microsoft meeting? They keep bugging me about it. I don't know what it's about. Well, it was about Office 365. So, I basically put that together for our company, and then moved on to Azure and security and a bunch of things. And it's times come for me to go find something else to do, something rewarding. And so I just thought I'd put that out to the group, because this is the kind of audience, that I've been working in and around for several years now. And I really enjoy that. I think when I ask myself, like, what do I do? You know how it is in a small company, you do a lot of things. Somebody told me, oh, you're one of those wild card people that does a little bit of everything. Really, in terms of titles, it comes down to account management, particularly like an inside sales type thing, and also professional services. Okay, so somebody wants to go to Azure, or they want to put in EMS or Microsoft Defender. It's like, well, how do we get that done? How do we get the engineers organized, et cetera, et cetera? Anyway, that's me. That's my commercial. Thank you all very much. I'll put my stuff in the chat here and turn it back to you, Sherman.
Thank you so much, Dan. This is a community, right? This is a community thing. And I also encourage each and every one of you to go ahead and put, who you are, what you do in the chat window, because we can use this as networking. I don't endorse very many people, products, or companies. So, you can trust me if you're looking for a salesperson, somebody to help drive revenue, give Dan a call. It might be a good idea to go ahead and do that. All right. So moving forward here, I want to bring Eric Van Bibber on. This is the Microsoft, I'd like to call it the Microsoft Minute, but it's going to take you about 2 minutes. He's got a really interesting update about what Microsoft is doing with email. It's really interesting. So pay attention. Hey, Eric, do you want to unmute and come on video?
I have unmuted, and video should be coming shortly.
Perfect. Now, everyone, pay attention. This is actually, I was like, what? So, Eric, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about what you and I discussed earlier today?
Yeah, absolutely. I was invited to a Microsoft kind of background conversation with the Exchange team. Office 365 is in the works to implement the blocking of all incoming mail from untrusted sources. Now, that's a longer-term goal. They're starting immediately with any organization that has Exchange 2007 on premises connected to their Office 365 environment. If mail is being sent from that 2007 server to any Office 365 recipient, it's going to get rejected with a non-delivery in about the next 30 days, 30 to 45 days. Following that, they're going to move on to Exchange 2010 and block that, and then 2013 and block that, because those three versions are completely out of support. January or so of next year, they're going to block Exchange 2016 and 2019 if they're below a certain patch level. And then they're also going to start looking at mail passing through gateways like Mimecast and Barracuda and stuff like that. And eventually, probably by the end of 2024, they're going to have methodologies to reject mail from any untrusted source, not just from Microsoft Exchange servers or, known partners. So this affects all of us that are in 365. This means if you've got partners, customers, suppliers, vendors that are emailing you, and they are not updated with their Exchange server, they may get non-deliveries and you don't realize it. And then they think you're out of business or there's something wrong, So we all need to think forward about who is contacting us and kind of give them a soft introduction to this, that, hey, if you start receiving non-deliveries, it's not something within our control to fix for you. And if you need to contact us while you're in an unsupported version of Exchange, you might need to go to our web forms or some other communication strategy until you can get your Exchange server updated. And then I put my contact details in the chat at the very beginning. If anybody's got any questions or wants to talk in more detail about that, reach out to me and I can tell you what I know.
Fantastic. Eric, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. It was a pretty good idea. Hey, so with two housekeeping items real quick, if I could please ask you to answer these polls with two polls. They're anonymous, so we're not asking who you are. But the first poll is frequency. The first poll is going to be the Microsoft update. We're thinking of doing a 5-minute update on every call. Wondering if you guys would be interested. Do you like that idea of doing it? Would you like that as part of the show? We want to make sure that we're always providing something of merit, right? Not just these great speakers, but yeah, it's anonymous. Don't worry about it. If you don't like it, totally cool. Say no, not really. You just want to get to that. But if you could, awesome. Okay, perfect. All right. Awesome, awesome. Okay, we'll go with that. Thank you very much for that. Now we also have one more question we'd like to ask you. Do you like the frequency of the Voice of the Microsoft Partner? We do it every last Friday of every month, right? Every month. More frequently, less frequently, perfect how it is. We always want to think about like saturation possibly or non-saturation. Maybe we want more speakers, more content. I don't know. Could you please go ahead and just give us a couple more clicks on that? Remember, it's anonymous, right? We're just looking to get some information there. I expected May. Yeah. All right. Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Let's go ahead and get over to the agenda. And looks like perfect how it is a really good idea. We do have one less and one more. Okay, maybe I'll have those two people talk to each other and see what we can do. But awesome, thank you, thank you. Okay, so guest speaker today, Lynne Frankel, founder of Lynne Frankel LLC. We are so excited about that, and we're going to get right into the content today. So that was all the stuff, right, that we have, the housekeeping stuff here, but we have the guest speaker, and then we're getting right into mentorship and coaching discussion. Now, remember, we could also use the chat window to ask questions. If you hear something that comes up and maybe you want to ask a question or say something, please go ahead and put it into the chat window. And also, if you're on LinkedIn right now, go ahead and put it there, because we have a separate side chat that we're going to be taking those questions just to make sure that they're okay to ask. But we definitely want to, bring that anecdotal thoughts, or if you've been a mentee for Lynne, maybe you want to say something out there about it, right? So just want to put that out there. So that's what we're going to do. All right, let's introduce our great speaker here. So Lynne, if you don't know Lynne, she spent about 30 years at Microsoft, right, leading complex business solutions. And just 30 years in itself is amazing, because it's Hunger Games over there, right? I mean, every 5 years you're put into a field, and who knows who's going to survive, right? But she's been highly recognized as a business leader. Her and I knew each other, I think, since about 2016, and I always looked up to her. And one of the really great things is being a veteran of Microsoft for that many years. You have so much experience in the channel, building channels, partner relationships, a strategy. And that's, I think, one of the coolest thing about working at Microsoft is just the heady strategy meetings that you have, right? But maybe they had strategy meetings to have strategy meetings to have strategy meetings, which always kind of made me feel like, okay, come on, let's just get to the strategy meeting, that kind of thing, right? But in 2020, she left, and she launched Lynne Frankel LLC to help businesses seeking to expand, reach, and achieve scale in bringing their solutions to market. So, Lynne, would you mind just kind of introducing yourself to the group here?
Absolutely, thank you. And first, let me say how much I appreciate the opportunity to join you today, talking about what I'm doing now. But as Sherman said, I was with Microsoft for a very long time in the partner business, always engaged with partners. 100% of my background is with partners focused on Microsoft. And when I left in 2019, I took about a year off, and then I started the Lynne Frankel LLC, which does three things. I am doing strategy work with select partners. I get all my business from word of mouth. So there's no advertising. If you don't know me or know someone who knows me, you're probably not going to be engaging me for anything. But I focus on channel strategy in particular, but also general business strategy is 1/3 of what I do. Another third of what I do is focused on mentoring and coaching, which is what we're talking about here. And then another third of what I do, I really fell into, and is really more focused on career coaching, helping people sort of define what it is they want to do next, and then helping them through the process, whether that's getting the right resume together or preparing for interviews or whatever. I sort of fell into that with just a lot of demand of people who were asking me to support them in that way, and I decided to do it.
That's awesome. That is so very awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and we feel like this is a coup. We got Lynne Frankel. I think everybody here knows that too. So, all right, let's get into it. We got some time here. We're landing the plane. We're on the right track. So, the very first question, I kind of want to just start this out. Let's kind of go to the high level, right? So, what is your general leadership philosophy? How would you answer that?
Yeah, so I would say that my leadership philosophy starts by genuinely trying to be a good human being who cares about the people around me, and at a foundational level, conveying what I hope is mutual respect, grounded in empathy, thoughtfulness, and kindness, while also being very clear on the non-negotiables. I don't want anyone to walk away thinking my leadership philosophy says I'm a pushover, because I'm not. But I believe that leaders should nurture those in their orbit and should adapt their approach to ensure that everyone that is a part of their world has the opportunity to contribute at their very best, whatever that may look like. I also believe that leadership is not bound by title or power, and that everyone has the responsibility to participate in the process, whether you are leading or being led. I trust people to make good choices until there's a reason not to. I listen to their thoughts and ideas, and I really genuinely try to lead through action by modeling the behavior I want others to follow and foster for the team.
That's fantastic. And when I think about that, you and I both know Eugene Chi, who may or may not be on here, or he's going to hear about this. But one of my, I've never had a better manager in my whole life. But he was very inclusive. He was very supporting. He allowed us to be or become the employee that we wanted to be. And the other thing too is just I don't think in 2 years that I had him that there was ever any type of super frustration that got above a level of just hey, let's look at this from a logic standpoint. Let's take emotion out of it and be able to, let's talk about this. Well, how do we fix this? And then he always said, Sherman, you got to learn how to think 3 steps ahead. He goes, so right now you're answering today, but you're not answering tomorrow. What is your answer today going to happen to you tomorrow? And I would sit there, every meeting he gave with me, I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Because that part of my brain, I don't have. I got other parts of the brain that are maybe bigger, but yeah, that got squeezed out. So, well, let me ask you this. So, transitioning, can you tell us maybe a little bit about your experiences working with partner teams at Microsoft and what you learned about building successful partnerships?
Absolutely. So, as we already established, I have a long history of working with partners, both at an entry level and a leadership level. I sold software, cloud solutions, and hardware solutions through partners. Those partners were both well-established businesses and startups. And I mostly executed and needed to be executing at significant scale. I launched countless products and programs, way too many to count, all through partners. And I was really known as a fierce partner ally during my tenure at Microsoft. And I hope the people that continue to work with me continue to see me in that light. I'm going to come back to my leadership philosophy because I believe business is done with people. And if you engage and support the people involved in it, you have a path to success. I know many of the partners that are potentially listening to this call, they're programmatically managed by Microsoft, which makes it very hard to feel like you're truly partnering. And that's where an organization like the Crancer Group comes into play, because you're inserting the people portion of that. But I think it's really important that you recognize that partnerships are done with people. And frankly, especially in the case, I think, of working with a company like Microsoft and many of the large technology companies, you need to be really conscious about what you can do for them, navigating what you can do for them in such a way that you get your needs met as well. And that requires effort. It is easy to get so caught up in what you need. Your hair is on fire because your clients or your solution or whatever needs whatever it is that you need. But it's really important to not lose sight of what the other person or the other organization or person in the partnership is getting, especially when the balance of power is not equal. And you need to recognize that just because you approach someone in a particular way with a specific intent doesn't mean they're going to meet you there. And you need to be prepared for that. And you need to be prepared to adapt if that's the case. Personally, I always found that my strongest relationships, were grounded in trust. And that trust can generally only be established over time, demonstrating persistent and consistent demonstration of my intent. And if you have that, and again, it takes time. It's not something that you just show up, say hello, shake a hand, or wave over your video, and all of a sudden you have a trusted relationship. But if you put in the time and you put in the effort and you make yourself relevant to the other party, I do believe that you you have the ability to prove yourself over time as reliable and supportive of what they need. And then, that gives you the opportunity to deliver even the worst news and still come out with a positive outcome.
Oh, that is a great response. I want to call on one of our contributors, Walter Sillen. Walter, and just kind of give a little bit different perspective. He's a partner here on Power Platform. What are your thoughts on that question that we just talked about, Walter? Tell us about your experience with partner teams at Microsoft. How have you navigated that?
Well, partner teams at Microsoft have been, it's been a changing dynamic over the last several years, right? As their different parameters have been put in place every few years. So it's been a changing thing. We've worked with, as a Power Platform partner, we've worked with teams that helped us get apps on AppSource. We've worked with teams that helped us get, there's the marketing teams and all that. For a while we were managed, then the parameters changed, and then we weren't managed. So, we've worked with a variety of different teams, and we've had really good success with that, particularly the AppSource and the marketplace teams. They're super helpful, and then, but outside of Microsoft, the other area that I would throw in there with partnership, is with other partners, right? We've met with we've been building relationships. And I'm not talking about the hair on fire. Oh, I need a partner. Hey, does somebody know somebody that does this? It's just going out and looking down the road and saying, hey, we're a Power Platform. We don't do cybersecurity. Maybe, who could if we run into that again next time, I don't want to say no. I want to say, yeah, I got a guy, right? And so I've been working for the last year or so intently on building that network so that we could be, we had those partnerships in place, and we could be that partner for other people. And I think that has really helped position us from a sales perspective, as your opening line was talking about. This year, that's a much bigger part of our kind of pipeline than it ever has been, and I hope to keep it going.
Oh, that's a great different perspective. And just one little segue here. I remember there's this really dynamic person who told me Microsoft isn't in the business to build your business.
Right.
And you need to think about that. Like, we're working with a company called Sentinel, which is a very big company. We're doing an alliance meeting with them. But one of our charters was one to help them shape their business, right, and to get the right, solutions designations, the right offers and co-sell. But it's actually to then up their profile in the Microsoft teams that could then start working with them, right? A lot of people think that, oh, I got all this, and all of a sudden people are starting to give me, Microsoft is giving deals. But what's interesting is we found this one offer they had, and it was a cyber insurance readiness workshop. And it was actually helping companies figure out what Microsoft products they could use, right, that would satisfy the requirements of getting cyber insurance. Because right now it's actually getting harder and harder with more and more breaches. But now we've been socializing that inside of the Microsoft ecosystem, some leadership, and we're getting a lot of traction. Like, oh, wow, this could be helpful because this will then highlight some of these things. But the idea that I'm trying to portray here is that you find something that's going to help, right? That could help Microsoft then attain quota and achievement. And then ultimately it's going to then come back to you because they're going to say, well, hey, they're bringing me this. Hey, I might have something there to bring to them, right? But it's not going to be, that's how you got to work this partner ecosystem or the teams at Microsoft to actually make things happen. We do have a question from LinkedIn from Madeline. Says, would you talk about being a female leader and how you navigate the line between being decisive and kind without being a pushover? That's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. This comes up a lot for female leaders. And the one thing I would say right off the bat is there's a lot of research that says that female leaders get better outcomes, with no disrespect to all the men on the call. But there is empirical evidence that different leadership styles can achieve really, really fantastic outcomes. And so, look, it is a fine line. It will depend on who is in the room with you at the time that you have to make a decision. Am I going to be kind or am I going to be more forceful? I think you do need to be conscious of the fact that you want to be true to yourself. And if you are in an environment that doesn't value and respect the way you lead as a female leader, you might be in the wrong environment. Doesn't mean you can't still stay. I mean, I can tell you, I had a coach once that Microsoft hired for me who, it was through a leadership development program, and I remember lamenting to him one day that I didn't see myself reflected in the Microsoft leaders that were around me. I had a very different style and approach. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s, before Microsoft became a kindler, gentler company. But I just didn't see myself reflected, and I was sort of saying, I don't know that I'm going to make it here. And I ended up making it another 20 years from then, so I did make it. But he basically, he said to me, different doesn't have to be bad. There's no judgment associated with being different. And he actually even said to me that he thought Microsoft needed more leaders like me, and I should absolutely feel empowered to be who I was and lead the way that was intuitive to me. And can I tell you that it always worked out great for me? Of course it didn't. That's not how business works. But I would say more often than not, it worked as long as I was true to myself and reflected the kind of values into the business that I wanted to reflect. And I got plenty of feedback that sometimes they weren't as valued as I thought they would be. But I also got plenty of feedback as people gravitated toward wanting to work with me, wanting to support the work that I was doing because of the way they were supported in return. And so I think there's room for both. I think it's hard, and I think it's a never-ending balance, particularly for women. I don't know if that helps answer the question, but it can be done. And I would just say, don't become something you're not because you're a female leader. You're not a man. You won't lead like a man. You won't lead like me. You need to lead like you and find the place where you can thrive doing that.
Awesome. Madeline responded, thank you for your answer. Luckily, I work for a great company that has helped me grow. It is more of an internal issue I'm trying to work on. Thanks so much. I love that different doesn't have to be bad. You're right, it doesn't. It doesn't. So I'm going to skip number 3, probably go to number 4, about how can individuals best approach. So that's I just want to give you a heads up on that one, Lynn. So how can individuals best approach building relationships with mentors and coaches within their organizations? So that's a lot of time. I remember I was scared when I first got to Microsoft. I was like, well, how do I do this? Like, when and why? Right. So what are your thoughts?
I think my first thought is that most organizations don't have mentors and coaches who don't also have day jobs. So you need to be incredibly respectful of their time, especially the ones that are in highest demand. And every organization has the people that everyone wants to be mentored or coached by. And so you need to be conscious of that as you think about how you're going to potentially engage them. My experience at Microsoft, which I know is not true in all companies, but my experience is that if you want the best mentors and coaches, you're really going to have to be in that top X% of the organization. And that I don't mean by title or the size of organization that you run. I mean by demonstrating your potential to learn and grow in a direction that the company is seeking its employees to learn and grow. You may need to get sponsorship. You may need to get some help networking. You may find that your manager or skip level or closest friend who you bounce ideas off of can all open their networks to you and help you find someone that can help you with whatever it is that you're seeking to develop on at any point in time. But you have to be proactive about it. Mentors are not necessarily going to come to you saying, hey, how can I help you? I've got nothing but time. Because I'm sure we all know, I don't know anybody who says, I've got nothing but time on my hands. What can you find something for me to do? And then I think you have to, in context of being respectful, you need to plan to drive the conversation and drive it. This is not a casual networking opportunity in context of a mentor relationship. You need to plan to schedule the meetings, be prepared with what it is you wish to discuss, ensure that those conversations are purposeful, that you have a reason to get together. And they're, like I said, they're not just the casual catch-up or informal networking opportunity. You want to, as much as you can, make the relationship bi-directional so that not only are you getting something or taking something from your mentor, but you're also giving something back. You can share interesting articles that you come across, or find projects that you think your mentor would benefit from knowing about. But avoid spam at all costs. Don't just go out and search the internet for articles and start sending them to your mentor. Be purposeful, be thoughtful. Demonstrate in all the ways you can that your mentoring conversations with this person are important, that their investment in you is well worth it, because you take ownership of your career and your development very seriously. And let me say, I talked about, you want to get the best mentors, you need to be in the top X% of the organization. Don't despair if that's not you. If that's not you, you still have opportunities to get close to those people in other ways, or get close to other people. Participating in special projects, philanthropy events, volunteering outside the company. Don't expect that all good mentors are only available within your four walls. External mentors can be really, really powerful. And you can meet people in very unexpected ways, whether it's joining a sports team, taking an art class. Industry associations are awash with mentor opportunities and mentee opportunities. And so just don't necessarily think only in context of your day job and the four walls of the people you come in contact with. And lastly, I would say, even with all that said, if you're new to the area, you're new to role, you're new to the company, and you don't see a way to get connected to people, network your way connected to people. Be open about what it is you're trying to develop, and then go tell people, hey, I'm really working on this thing, or I've got this big presentation coming up, and I need some help ensuring I'm at the right altitude. Who should I connect with? And you'd be surprised at the number of people who will go out of their way to help you find someone that can help you.
That is a great answer. That is fantastic. Eric Eric Van Buren actually put there how to get people with high egos to accept a mentor. I want to ask you this is actually follow-up kind of question to that. I got this advice from one of my ex-managers at Microsoft if you want to mentor, with somebody, find out how you can help them with maybe a project that they're currently working on, because we're all, especially at Microsoft, everyone's oversubscribed, right? Holy Moses, right? Oversubscribed. But not just Microsoft, and a lot of other organizations, IT organizations. But he always said, well, hey, if you want that, why don't you go to them and offer help first? So what are your thoughts on that? Just can you extrapolate just a tiny little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes back to what makes good partnerships, right? Everyone is running full tilt at whatever it is they're focused on. And some people do a better job than others, or prioritize more highly helping others and seeking out ways to help others. And even if you find someone that is very focused on helping others, there's still only a certain number of hours in the day. When you have a full-time day job, and maybe you have a family, or maybe you have outside commitments outside of work, there are only so many hours a day. You still have to sleep, you still have to eat. And so I come back to figuring out ways to help others as a way to get close to them, demonstrate your value to them, get them invested in you as a person, invested in you as an employee, invested in you as a future leader, or a current leader who can, help their business grow faster at an accelerated pace, or can take it in new directions that maybe they hadn't thought of. There are all kinds of ways, I think, that in my case, tie back to what I talked about of what makes a good partner, what's my leadership philosophy. It's about the people. And I think if you're going to take, you should also be prepared to give. And you may have to start by giving, to demonstrate and get on someone's radar before they say, hey, this person's really interesting. I'll go for coffee. Let's get on the phone. Let's do a quick 30 minutes if you're not in the same place. I think there are ways to sort of wiggle your way in without having a
That's
formal
awesome.
mentoring situation.
I'm kind of wondering if, our next question that we had was, can you provide some practical tips for
Yeah.
creating meaningful connections? I think you kind of answered that one, right? Just in that last.
Yeah. The only thing I would want to add from that question that we talked
Yeah.
about is the biggest tip I have is to do your job and do it well, because nobody has hired anyone to be mediocre, and nobody wants to connect their own brand to the brand of someone who's not good at their job. And so while we're talking about all this mentoring stuff, it's an and. It's an addition to your day job that you're going to focus on and do really, really well, because that's being someone that people want to work with and want to support is going to help you along the way.
I like that. That's true. I mean, you need to be, that's what you're talking earlier about the top 10%, and you have to do that, because I think mentoring also helps you get the next job too. It's just the networks and the connections.
Networking.
It is.
Right?
It is.
It's a form of networking.
It's a form of networking, right? Because maybe you want to be on that team. Maybe you're in Microsoft, you're on the service team. You're like, I want to be on the AI team. And they're like, well, if you just applied, they'd be like, hey, you're on the service team. You don't have any AI. But now if you go doing some projects, you show that, then all of a sudden, wait a minute, I may like the way they think. I mean, we could potentially use them for strategy, right?
Absolutely.
So when you're thinking about like leadership, right, from a leadership perspective, how can leaders encourage a culture of mentorship and coaching within their own teams? So let's kind of dig into that.
So I would say start by being a mentor and coach yourself. Like, it's got to start, again, going back to my leadership principle. I believe in modeling the behavior you want others to follow. And so be a mentor and coach yourself to others so that others can learn from your experience. I think you also need to ensure that everyone on the team has a mentor or coach. Ask employees. This isn't rocket science. This is as simple as having frontline managers ask their employees, do you have a mentor? What is it that you're working on, and who's supporting you in that? Maybe they don't know. Maybe they haven't thought about it, but talk to them about where they need to develop, and jointly think through who might be the best person to connect with them. Your employees and your teams may need your help in meeting people and connecting people, because they just may not know how to make this happen. I would also, I'm going to go back, I've said it already, but I'm going to encourage both internal and external mentors. Just because, we do it here this way doesn't mean external people don't have great ideas about how things can get done. And I think can add a lot of value, to your own business by gearing people outside the organization as well. I also think you need to make time to follow up with employees. You need to ask the questions, have the conversations. How are things going? What are they learning? What are you struggling with in context of the mentoring and coaching relationships that they've established? And provide support and sponsorship to be sure everyone gets into the right mentoring or coaching scenario.
I think it also looks really good on a leadership, a position, is if you're getting a good portion of your team connected and pushed and out, because it's not just top level networking, it's bottom level, because who knows, somebody you hired might end up being your boss at one point, or you need a lifeline. But I think that reflects very well, right, on the impact that you have for the company, because you're kind of a steward, right? But I also, I like your answer as well, because when I remember my first year at Microsoft, people were talking about mentors, and I didn't quite understand it. I literally just like, well, why, and I didn't understand the impact of it at Microsoft, or how I could use it to the advantage, or be part of the brand, right? Building your brand. So I think as a leader, we need to have those conversations with our folks to say, hey, would you like a mentor? How can I help you get to somebody? Do you need some help building this particular skill or that particular skill? Hey, let me get in touch with so and so. So I think they're really good at that, right? Kind of a deal. Okay, great. So some great questions out here, and great things. We're not going to hit them just yet. I like this one. Do you ever battle with imposter syndrome? We can't answer that one right now.
Oh my God, my picture is next to the definition of imposter syndrome. It's a little picture of me right next to the definition. Absolutely. That same coach I told you about introduced imposter syndrome to me, and I am the poster child of it. But I'm also the poster child of fake it till you make it, and people don't need to know what your internal dialogue really is They just need to see confidence and assurance and, frankly, leadership, regardless of how you're feeling. And if you change your behavior, your mindset will change.
Yeah. My team probably is at their wit's end with me, because I'm always absolutely 100%. Yes, we can. Sherman, not again. Another workload you put on me. I'm like, yeah, sorry, but we got to help. Anyways, moving on. So how can, excuse me, individuals build resilience in the face of difficult challenges and setbacks?
So I would suggest that you start by changing your mindset. And I know that's become very cliche. There's a lot of talk about mindset everywhere right now. But I think it really applies in this case, because the flip side of a challenge is an opportunity. By reframing the situation, both externally and most importantly, internally, in the self-talk you say to yourself, into the positive expression of a situation can fundamentally change how you think about the situation. The reality is that a challenge is really an opportunity to create something new or do something differently. A setback is an opportunity to learn and get smarter. I can't tell you the number of times I was sitting in a meeting getting beaten up about one thing or another, and I would have to look across the table at someone and say, look, I reserve the right to learn and get smarter. The key in context of a setback is to do the postmortem so that you understand what happened, why you had the setback, and then proactively go out and communicate in a non-judgmental way, fact-based way. Hey, we had this setback, and this is what we've learned, and this is what we're going to do in the future to avoid having the same setback hit us again. Focusing on what you can do and can control is so important. I mean, so much of our business lives are outside of our control. Someone else is controlling all different parts and pieces of it. But focusing on what you do control can be really empowering. And it can help foster a more optimistic mindset and build resilience organically.
That is fantastic. Thanks for that. Moving on here, can you share, because I know we talked about like the processes, how to get one, how to do that, but can you maybe help share some examples of a successful mentor-mentee relationships that you've had a significant impact on a person's development? And by the way, we've already gotten some notices from people that you've already done some business with, that you've done that. They're like, she's the best. But yeah, from your perspective,
Yeah, so I mean, good examples of mentoring are all around us. And I think you might be surprised at the number of people that are being mentored or coached, maybe not in formal contexts, but in informal contexts, in unstructured ways. I think examples abound. I recently mentored a woman. I'm engaged with a partner in Texas and doing some mentoring of key individuals within their organization. And I was brought in to address the fact that she was very emotional in her business. The executive team felt she had a tremendous amount of potential and really needed her to understand that while you don't want to squelch emotion, you want people to be passionate about what they do, you don't want them to be emotional in context of the business. And I hope the line there is clear in everyone's mind. And so we spent about 13 weeks together. And candidly, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to help her because, I'm mentoring people. I'm not providing therapy. But we spent time specifically focused on what is triggering all the emotion that she's bringing into the business and identifying ways for her to discern those triggers as they're happening to try to preclude the emotion from erupting out of her. But then even in contexts where she couldn't get control of her emotions, identifying strategies, something as simple as turning off your video camera if you're about to start to get emotional so that people don't see the evidence of the tears running down your face, can be really powerful. And she didn't feel that she had those tools. And by the end of the 13 weeks, I'm not going to say it was all about me. The woman was doing a whole bunch of other things, but by the end of the 13 weeks, she was able to demonstrate being able to show up to work every day and be passionate about what she was doing without bringing an emotional response into circumstances where things were either not going her way or she didn't feel heard or whatever the problem was that was triggering the emotion. And so I will say it's 6 months later now, and the executive team has seen a consistent and persistent ability to leave that emotion, at the door. And, they've started to really think about her as a next generation leader in the company. Now, 6 months does not a career make, but her trajectory is moving in the right direction. And they're willing to place some bets with her. And so they've started to place those bets. And, jury's out on where it's ultimately going to go. But, 6 months later, she's in a very different place than she was at the beginning of our work together.
And that's a minefield of a relationship, because holy Moses, that isn't just about business strategy. It's about emotional ownership of your own ability to communicate. And I think we've all had either employed or been a part of a team where there's somebody that really has that, very emotional response to everything. And what I found at Microsoft, you're not going up if you're blowing up.
You're not.
You're just no, it's logical stuff. So that's quite an undertaking to do with that. Very interesting. So Walter had a funny one. I'm not going to actually say it on live. Look at the chat window, everybody. He's got a good response to that one. But let me get into my next one. Is what role can an organization play in supporting mentorship and coaching programs, and how can they ensure these programs that they're putting together are successful?
Yeah, so developing a formal program is one option, but a formal program requires additional resources that may not be available to you. And so I think it's equally valid and important to just support informal connections through simply ensuring that everyone within the organization has a mentor, which can be managed through people managers. It doesn't have to be more complex than that. Helping employees who don't know who would be a good mentor for them find the right fit based on what everyone's agreed we're going to work on, and make those networking connections is another way. I think having employees that are willing to mentor others, and this is a little bit of a minefield because we all know people who think they are rock stars and so good at their jobs, and they know everything there is to know about the topic or the company or whatever, and they'd make great mentors. Whereas you think, I don't think I want other people emulating the way this person does business. And so you do need to be careful that the people you have in your organization that you identify as mentors, or even externally, are people whose values align to yours as an organization, and who are going to support the approaches and processes and help develop your employees in a direction that you want them to go. I also think that providing time for mentor-mentee coach relationships, to meetings to happen, those connections to happen, is critical. And the way to ensure a program is successful is to measure it, right? Track that the meetings are happening. Track that employees are making it a priority to work on the things that you've asked them to work on. Have specific goals tied to these mentoring relationships, and measure if you're actually reaching them. Focus on the purpose of the conversations when you're setting those goals, and those will differ obviously by individual, but be sure you're specifically focused on what that person is supposed to be working on, and ensure that that is in fact where the conversations are going and the progress is being made. I also think it's really important to time bind mentor relationships. I mentioned I'm working with a group of people in Texas. We're doing 13-week programs. I've done year-long programs. I've had coffee with people, and it's a 30-minute or hour-long session where I had something very specific I wanted to get to, and I got to it. So just time bound whatever it may look like, but then switch things up. Don't establish mentors on July 1 and never look back, and never think, well, have we met the goals that we set? And if we have, great, let's move on to let's set another goal and move forward from there. And ensure that you're getting different people connected and fostering sort of that networking. And I also say, don't undervalue the role that anecdotal feedback can play in the process. It's very easy. My experience with mentoring is that it's very easy for people to have that be the first thing that drops from the plate, right? So if you're getting anecdotal feedback that, well, I really haven't had time. I've had all these other, constraints or things pulling on my time. I haven't had a chance to meet with my mentor yet. We intended to start 3 months ago. We haven't really started. Or you're hearing from a mentee that the mentor never shows up. In that case, you have an issue where people don't understand the prioritization that you're giving to having mentors and coaches in your work environment. And you need to do some course correction to be sure that people are actually prioritizing that time in that way.
That's a great answer. That is so good. There's a follow-up here, and I'll answer it, but then if you want to, you can too. Why do you think many companies do not have a mentorship program internally in place? In my opinion, I think they're so focused on working in the business, not necessarily working on the business. And they're maybe don't understand the impact, the value, intrinsic ROI, not actual ROI, but intrinsic, what is going to happen to them, I think is really the reason they may not do that or think about that. But would you agree with my assessment?
I agree. And I would add that if you're going to have a formal program in place, it takes resource. And depending on how, or your investment of some sort, and depending on how a business is resourced or what the priorities are of, to your point, being in the business or working in the business, those resources may be too scarce for someone to devote time and money and energy toward managing this any other way than in an informal way. So I think there are a lot of barriers, but I also think the best employees are seeking this out. The next best employees need a little bit of help. They need just someone to raise it to their attention and help them find the right connections. And so it doesn't have to be this big overblown program that is automatically, generated through whatever, reminding people and blah, blah, blah. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It can really be very simple and structured in a way that doesn't require more resource than maybe 30 minutes of time in a one-on-one with your manager or your management team, having a conversation with their employees, and then holding people accountable, right? Okay, we talked about this, we agreed this is what you're going to work on. Let's talk about who are the right people to connect you with and making those connections.
That's awesome. We're coming up, we got about 7 minutes left, got maybe a couple more questions here. Just want to let you know. So how can employees continue to build their skills and knowledge, even if they don't have access to a formal mentorship or coaching program?
Yeah, so first I want to reiterate, formal programs are not required. Some of my best experiences personally have come from informal situations where I simply reached out to someone I knew could help me. And maybe we only had a few conversations, or maybe I secured their support to get into a more, long-term milestone generated engagement with me. But either way, the point of mentoring is to benefit from someone else's experience. I would say I had an opportunity to talk with Walter earlier in the week, and I even came up with this thing in my own head that I called silent mentoring, right? Let's say you can't get the people you want engaged with you. But what you can do is you can watch and learn, and you can see how other people handle certain circumstances that may be on your development list. And by watching those people, you can learn what you like and what you don't like and about the kind of leader you want to be. And you can also then follow up. If you're in the room, maybe you walk out the door with someone and say, hey, why did you ask that question? Or what were you thinking when they were saying blah, blah, blah to you? Because you looked very calm and my head was about to explode, right? You can have that conversation. And if you're doing business remotely, I'm all for remote work. Follow up with a chat in Teams or Slack or whatever technology it is you're using. Send them a text message if you have their mobile phone number. There are lots of ways to connect with people. It doesn't have to be in a formal context.
That's great. Hey, Walter, I'm going to bring you back in, bud. What are your thoughts on that question? How can employees continue to build their skills and knowledge, even if they don't have access to formal mentorship and coaching programs? What is your experience?
Well, yeah. You know, we're not a big group. We're not Microsoft size or anywhere near that. But you know, we don't have a formal program. You know, with a dozen people, it's we don't really have a formal program. What I kind of do is, as people come in, it's more of a, as people join the team, I kind of introduce other people as go-tos for certain areas. And it's funny, it's like you know, it's like I was kind of unconsciously doing some of those things that Lynn was talking about in here. Like you know, sometimes we have a ninja technical developer on our team who thinks, oh yeah, I can train everybody. And I'm like, you're not necessarily the best consultant. You're the go-to for the technical issues, but maybe not the best consultant or client management person. Let's not, you know, there's different areas, but you know, managing, you know, kind of directing people to that. Somebody earlier, Judy, had said circle of mentors. I think that, you know, I never had a name for it, but that's kind of what we do. We've got kind of a core group of people that have people or that have a skill or an experience that, from my perspective, and I'm drawing on what you had said earlier, Lynn, like from my perspective, I look at it and I'm like, those are the skills I want to propagate within the team. So that's where I kind of direct people to talk to those groups. And we don't have the four walls and the water cooler as a remote group spread out across the country. So, you know, I kind of direct people. It's like, hey, look, if you've got a question with that, you know, always contact me. But, you know, maybe I'm not the best person for that. But you know who is? You know, somebody who's been 25 years. They worked at Microsoft and Oracle and worked at a small boutique shop. They've had all this different experience. That could be a really good resource for you. And so we kind of do it that way in kind of a, and it's always been informal, right?
That's great. That's great. Well, hey, for both of you and Lynn predominantly, thank you so much for coming on here. This has been a powerful hour, you know, just learning and getting your insight. You've always been such a great, you know, a friend, a mentor, you know, to me, even from knowing each other for a while. Thank you again for coming today. A couple of quick things here, or last thought. You want to just give maybe a last thought?
I was just going to say, you know, both Forbes and Deloitte have done research and have indicated that coaching and mentoring is just going in one direction, and there's going to be more and more of it. And I think that particularly if you have millennials in your organization, you know, Deloitte has said that mentoring can help increase retention rates. 68% of millennials with a mentor plan to stay with the organization for 5 years, compared to 32% of millennials who don't. And I think as business gets more distributed, and less centralized in an office, mentoring and coaching is going to be needed to fill the gap that gets created by the engagements that don't happen organically when you're all in the same place. And so I'm very grateful to you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on mentoring. I thank you so much for including me. I think this has been really fun, and I thank you for including me and for everyone coming and listening.
Awesome. So if you want to get a hold of Lynn, go to LinkedIn and send her a connection. Okay.
Yeah.
Just because of, she's very tight there. Just back to Dan Callahan. If you're looking for a superstar salesperson, you need somebody, give him a shout. And then thank you, Walter. Walter is our resident contributor, Power Platform guru who helps you know, partners with that. Next month is Unlocking Growth, Effective Sales Strategies for Net New Customer Acquisition. This is going to be a great one. We're going to really bring you some new stuff about how the new methods of customer acquisition. Lastly, you know, we didn't talk too much about ourselves, but the Crancer Group, we specialize in helping Microsoft partners navigate the Microsoft ecosystem, but more importantly is how to take your business to the next level of how do you start getting leads and you know, leads and referrals from Microsoft sellers, cloud solution architects. It's a whole nother level of working with Microsoft. That's what we specialize in. And I'm also the president of Surveil North America, which is a cloud economics tool, read-only access into Microsoft licensing to find optimization and sales results. So just want to say thank you, everybody, for coming here. The guru, yeah, Walter, it's great. Thanks again. And we landed the plane right on the dot. Every month we do this. Have a great afternoon. Talk to you later. Lynn, thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.